I'm recording this video with permission from Scholastic. So today we're going to be reading chapter 5 of Frindle. Don't forget to go back and watch the other videos if you missed them. But this chapter is called The Report. And remember last chapter we learned that Nick had this big report that he needed to do on where words come from because Miss Granger kind of caught him trying to stall, and so he had to go home and try to figure out what this meant, and he realized it's a lot harder than he thought it would be. We left off on the last page. He said he decided that giving this report could actually be fun. He could make it into something special. After all, Miss Granger had asked for it. So we can tell based on the tone the author is writing with, that Nick has a plan, and it's not just to do the normal boring assignment that's hard like Miss Granger wants him to. He has like a sneaky plan. So I want you to stop before we continue and just make a prediction. What do you think Nick's gonna do? If you don't remember, you can go ahead and listen to that last video, or at least the end, so you remember kind of what we read. But think about, what do you think Nick is going to do? He is realizing that this project, this special report that Miss Granger has assigned him, could be fun. It doesn't sound super fun to me. And so I think Nick has a super sneaky special plan that he's gonna do. So I want you to take a minute, make a prediction, and then let's see if it comes true as we read. So this chapter is called The Report. By lunchtime the next day, Nick had a bad feeling in the pit of his stomach. 7th period was coming. He was going to have to stand up in front of Miss Granger's class. The eyes of everyone in the class would be glued to his face. And Miss Granger's eyes would be cranked up to maximum punch power. Remember how we had in our earlier chapter how her eyes weren't even turned up to half power? What do you think Miss Granger's eyes would be like when it's cranked up to maximum punch power? That would be pretty intense. He looked over his notes again and again. The first English dictionary, the first growth of English language, William Shakespeare, words from French and German, new words, old words, new inventions, Anglo-Saxon words, Latin and Greek roots, American English. It all became a big jumble in his mind. In his grand plan from the night before, in the harsh, fluorescent light of the school day, it seemed impossible. So we still don't know what his plan is yet. What is it with clocks in this school? When you're planning to go to the carnival after school, the clocks in every class practically run backward, and the school day lasts for about 3 weeks. But if you have to go to the barber shop or go shopping for clothes after school, zip, the whole day is over before you can blink. And today, after lunch, periods 5 and 6 went by in 2 ticks. As the 7th period bell rang, Miss Granger walked into the classroom, took 4 steps to her desk at the side of the room, flipped open the attendance book, glanced out at the class, and made 2 little check marks. Then, looking up at Nick, she said, "I think we have a little report to begin our class today. Nicholas." 15 seconds into 7th period, and Nick was on stage. This lady plays for keeps, thought Nick. He gulped, grabbed his crumpled note cards in his book bag, and walked to the front of the room. He stood next to the giant dictionary on its little table, and Miss Granger walked to the back of the classroom and sat primly on the tall stool next to the bookcases. She was wearing her blue uniform. Taking a deep breath, Nick began. "Well, the first thing I learned is that the first English dictionary..." Miss Granger interrupted. "Excuse me, Nicholas, but does your report have a title?" Nick looked blankly at her. "A title? No, I didn't make a title." "Class, please remember to include a title whenever you prepare an oral or written report. Now please, Nicholas, go along." She smiled and nodded at him. Nick began again, looking right at Miss Granger as he said, "The dictionary." A couple kids thought it was funny, but Nick played it straight and just kept talking. A lot of people think that the first English dictionary is put together in the 1700s by a man named Samuel Johnson. He lived in London, England, and he was real smart, and he wrote lots of books, and he wanted all the other smart people to have a good dictionary to use. So he made one. But there were other dictionaries before this. The thing that was different about Johnson's dictionary was its size, first of all. He had over 43,000 words in it. The class made a bunch of noises at this big number. "Ooh, wow," and stuff like that. And Nick lost his concentration. He glanced at Miss Granger, expecting to see those eyes drilling a hole in him. But they weren't. They were almost friendly, in a teachery kind of way. She shushed the class and said, "Go on, Nicholas. That's a fine beginning." Nick almost smiled, but he saw all the kids staring at him, so he gripped his note cards even tighter and jumped back in. The other thing that Samuel Johnson did that was special was to choose the words he thought were the most important, and then give lots of examples showing how the words could get used by people. For example, he showed how the word take could be used 113 different ways. Nick's report went on smoothly for 12 minutes. Nick was surprised at how easy it was to stand and talk about this stuff. At the end of the first 5 minutes, Miss Granger had to stop Nick again to say, "Class, it is not good manners to yawn out loud or put your heads down on the desk when someone is giving an oral report." No one in the class cared a little bit about the report, except Miss Granger. Every time Nick glanced up, she was smiling, and her eyes were not the least bit icy or sharp. She was eating this stuff up, listening and nodding, and every once in a while she would say, "Very good point," or "Yes, that's exactly right." But the next time Nick looked up, he saw Miss Granger sneaking a look at her watch. 18 minutes gone. Maybe his idea was going to work after all. Time for phase 2. So I want you to pause here, make another prediction. It sounded like Nick was following the rules and giving a really good presentation, but now it seems like he has a hidden plan behind this. So stop, think about how you think this is going to go, and I'm going to continue on. Reaching into his book bag, Nick pulled out the red dictionary he had brought from home, the one most of the kids had, the one Miss Granger said they should use. Nick said, "This is the dictionary that I use at home for my vocabulary work. And I opened it up last night to the very front, and right there I found out a lot about how the dictionary was made. Right in this book. So I thought some of the ideas would be good as a part of my report. It says here, Nicholas." Nick looked up. Miss Granger got off her tall stool, and its wooden legs made a screech on the linoleum. Head snapped to attention, and the class was alert. Miss Granger smiled, raised her eyebrows, and pointed at her watch. "Nicholas, I think the class should read that at home themselves. Now..." John's hand shot up into the air, and at Miss Granger's nod, he said, "But I don't have that dictionary at home, Miss Granger." "I have the blue one," and several other kids immediately said, "Me too." Miss Granger tried not to show that she was annoyed. "Very well, Nick, but it shouldn't take too long. We have other things to do today." Nick kept his eyes open wide and nodded, adjusted his glasses on his nose, and began to read. Without question, this modern American dictionary is one of the most surprisingly complex and profound documents ever to be created, for it embodies unparalleled etymological detail, reflecting not only superb lexicographic scholarship, but also the dreams and speech and imaginative talents of millions of people over thousands of years, for every person who has ever spoken or written in English has had a hand in its making. It was a long article, and all the kids were bored to death, but no one looked bored at all. Every kid in the room knew now that the period was more than half over, and that Nick's report wasn't just a report. It was one of the greatest time wasters he had ever invented. Miss Granger knew it too. She had edged around the room, from the back of the room to the side near the windows. Nick glanced up at her now, and then as he read, and each time Miss Granger's eyes clicked up to a new power level. After 8 minutes of Nick's best nonstop reading, her eyes were practically burning holes in the chalkboard behind him. There were only 10 minutes left in 7th period. When he took a breath to start off a new paragraph, Miss Granger cut him off. "That's a fine place to stop, Nicholas. Class, let's give him a round of applause for his report." The applause didn't last long. As Nick took his book bag and notes and sat down, Miss Granger's eyes went back to normal, and she actually smiled at him. "Although your report was a little long," she paused to let it sink in, "it was quite a good one. And isn't it fascinating that English has more different words than any other language used anywhere in the world?" She pointed at her large dictionary. "That one book contains the definitions of more than 450,000 words. Now, wasn't I right, Nicholas? And this will mean so much more since you learned about it on your own." Miss Granger was beaming at him. Nick sank lower into his chair. This was worse than writing the report, worse than standing up to give it. He was being treated like the teacher's pet. And he had the feeling that she was doing it on purpose. His reputation was in great danger, so he launched into another question. He raised his hand and didn't even wait for Miss Granger to call on him. Yeah, but you know, I still don't really get the idea of why words mean different things. Like, who says that D-O-G means the thing that goes woof and wags its tail? Who says so? And Miss Granger took the bait. Who says dog means dog? You do, Nicholas. You and I and everyone in this class and in this school and in this town and in this state and in this country. We all agree. If we lived in France, we would all agree that the right word for a hairy four-legged creature was a different word. Chin. It sounds like Shein. But it means what dog means to us. In Germany, they say Hund. And so on, all around the globe. But if all of us in this room decided to call that creature something else, and if everyone else did too, then that's what the word would be called. And one day it would be written in the dictionary that way. We decide what goes into the book. And she pointed at that giant dictionary, and she looked right at Nick, and she smiled again. Then Miss Granger went on. But of course, that dictionary was worked on by hundreds of very smart people for many years. So as far as we are concerned, that dictionary is the law. Laws can change, of course, but only if they need to. There may be new words that need to be made, but the ones in that book have been put there for good reasons. Miss Granger took a look at the clock. 8 minutes left. Now then, for today you were to have done the exercises beginning on page 12 in your Words Alive book. Please get out your papers. Sarah, will you read the first sentence, identify the mistake, and then tell us how you corrected it? Here's the picture for who says dog means dog. You have this dog. Miss Granger jammed the whole day's work into the last 8 minutes. A blur of verbs and nouns and prepositions, and yes, there was another homework assignment. And Nick didn't try to sidetrack Miss G again. He had slowed her down a little, but had he stopped her? No way. She was unstoppable. At least for today. So I want you guys to reflect a little bit. Think about, was your prediction right? Did you think that Nick was going to try to use his report to stall through the whole class? Or did you think that he had a different plan in mind? I want you to think back and then see if your prediction was right. But as far as that, we are done for today. I will see you guys tomorrow in our next video when we read chapter 6 together. Bye, guys.